During the late Ming Dynasty, two competing factions lurked within the imperial court. One was the eunuch clique, led by the once powerful Wei Zhongxian, and the other was the Qinglu faction, known as the Donglan Party. While the eunuchs were widely criticized during their time in power, upon ascending the throne, Emperor Chongzhen eradicated Wei Zhongxian and his followers, and the Ming Dynasty quickly fell apart. What was the reason behind this? Could the long-reviled Wei Zhongxian harbor another unknown side? What were the root causes of the Ming Dynasty's downfall? Perhaps Li Zicheng, who drove Emperor Chongzhen to despair and ultimately committed suicide, is best positioned to provide the answer. Tracing Li Zicheng's transformation from a common peasant to a rebellious leader reveals the beginnings of the Ming Dynasty's demise. Before raising the banner of rebellion, Li Zicheng was merely an ordinary farmer, even more destitute than his average counterpart. Because his family had no land to farm, he was forced to rely on the landlord, working for a meager living. But as a tenant farmer, he was destined to struggle for survival, barely saving a penny, seeking a change of heart. Li Zicheng borrowed money from the landlord, A.I. Juren. Using this money, he leveraged connections and secured a position as a postman at a government post station. While the work remained arduous, his income increased, allowing him to start a family and a career. If all had gone well, he could have paid off his debts by the end of the year and begun a new life. However, fate seemed to be against him. An imperial decree to close the post stations that swiftly deprived him of his livelihood. After ascending to the throne, Emperor Chongzhen issued a policy of increasing revenue and reducing expenditure to ease the court's financial pressures. This decree, in essence, meant that the court, strapped for cash and unable to sustain its massive expenditures, necessitated the layoff of some redundant personnel. Exactly who these redundant personnel were remains unknown. Unemployed and without a source of income, Li Zicheng was forced to return to work for the landlords to make ends meet. As the Lunar New Year approached, the landlord came to collect his debt, but Li Zicheng was unable to pay. He tried to stall for time by relying on his old friendship with the landlord, but the landlord showed no mercy and reported him to the authorities. The county magistrate sentenced him to be paraded through the streets as a warning to others. It was the cold winter, and Li Zicheng, dressed in rags, nearly froze to death. Thankfully, a group of poor brothers came to his rescue after the parade ended, and Li Zicheng narrowly escaped. However, the death of a few taels of silver became the spark that ignited Li Zicheng's rebellious spirit. On New Year's Eve, Li Zicheng's home was deserted. Furious, he went to the landlord's house to pay New Year's greetings and slaughtered the entire family. Upon returning home, he discovered his wife was having an affair with a wealthy villager. Furious, Li Zicheng again wielded his sword and beheaded both of them. He then fled his hometown with his nephew to join the army. Although military service was tough, at least it provided food and pay. So Li Zicheng and his nephew decided to stay. Soon after, Nurhasai led his army south, and Li Zicheng's unit was about to head to the front. Traditionally, soldiers were paid before a campaign to stabilize morale. But Li Zicheng and his men received nothing. They questioned their superiors, but they denied any knowledge of the government's disbursement of pay. Defending the nation was crucial, but without money, who would risk their lives? So, Li Zicheng led his men in a mutiny, deserting the Ming army and joining the peasant uprising. He fought alongside the rebels throughout the country, experiencing both triumphs over the Ming army and the desperate pressures of their doom. Driven to desperation, Li Zicheng led only a few thousand men into Hunan, where he opened up the Ming imperial granaries, prompting a continuous stream of hungry civilians. Li Zicheng's initial arrival consisted of only a few thousand men, but by the time he decided to continue, his army had rallied to a raging, unstoppable force. He did not actively recruit soldiers, yet countless peasants voluntarily followed him on his campaigns. After Sun Quanting's murder, Li Zicheng brought an end to the Ming Dynasty in just 5 months. Imperial officials fled, and Emperor Chongzhen ultimately hanged himself beneath a crooked old locust tree on Coal Hill. A deeper analysis of Li Zicheng's uprising reveals that its fundamental motivation lay in poverty, and its key success was the widespread poverty of the people. The root of these problems lay in the downfall of Wei Zhongxian. Despite his ruthless exploitation of the people, Emperor Chongzhen managed to raise only 4 million taels of silver. During Wei Zhongxian's reign, despite the layers of extortion by officials at all levels, he still managed to collect 8 million taels of silver. Military pay was never in short supply, and the court had no need to implement policies to increase revenue and reduce expenditure. Yuan Chonghuan accused Mao Wenlong of collusion with Wei Zhongxian and concluded that he was a member of his entourage. However, how could Mao Wenlong, who had been engaged in fierce battles with Nurhasai in Liaodong, have colluded with Wei Zhongxian? Those familiar with Wei Zhongxian know that he came from a poor family and was forced into imperial service due to heavy debt. Upon ascending to power, he generously helped relatives and old friends in his hometown, a model of philanthropy. Precisely because Wei Zhongxian came from the common people, he deeply understood the suffering of the common people and the hardships faced by the peasants. Therefore, when collecting taxes, he specifically targeted the wealthy. It is undeniable that Wei Zhongxian engaged in corruption. Yet, even after this embezzlement, he was able to ensure the smooth functioning of the state machinery. Emperor Chongzhen's execution naturally delighted the Donglan Party. who quickly pressured him to abolish commercial taxes, freeing the wealthy merchants from paying them. However, where would the funds for the national war come from? Although Wei Zhongxian was a corrupt official, he was also a capable minister, much like Heshin, who served Emperor Qianlong. If the Chongzhen emperor had kept Wei Zhongxian in power, he could have raised funds for the country that if he had eliminated him, the country would have been in dire straits. It all depended on the Chongzhen emperor's decision. Of course, from the perspective of later generations, Wei Zhongxian did have some value, and the Chongzhen emperor should not have executed him. However, from the Chongzhen emperor's perspective, Wei Zhongxian's crimes were so heinous that his elimination was the only option.